Some jobs require you to work while the rest of the world sleeps. The night shift exists in a strange pocket of time, those hollow hours between midnight and dawn, when reality feels thinner, when the silence grows heavy, and when things that shouldn't be possible somehow find their way through. The following 3 accounts come from verified night shift workers who agreed to share their experiences on the condition of anonymity. Their names have been changed, but their stories remain exactly as they told them. These are not ghost stories or urban legends. These are things that happen to real people in real places during the loneliest hours of the night. Marcus Webb had worked the front desk at the Desert Winds Motor Lodge for nearly 4 years. A small hotel sitting just off Interstate 15 in a forgotten stretch of Nevada desert, halfway between Las Vegas and nowhere. The kind of place people passed through but never remembered, which suited Marcus perfectly, because after his divorce 3 years ago and the breakdown that followed, he'd wanted nothing more than to disappear into routine, to exist in the margins where no one expected anything from him. At 42 years old, he'd made peace with a quiet life, and the night shift suited him perfectly. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week, filled with the predictable rhythm of late arrivals and early departures, the solitude he craved, and the way the desert sky turned from black to bruised purple to pale orange just before sunrise. The night of March 14th started like any other, with a young couple checking in around midnight, a lost trucker asking for directions at 1:30, and Marcus settling into his usual routine of paperwork and old movies playing silently on the small television behind the counter. The lobby filled with the smell of stale coffee and the faint chemical sweetness of air freshener that he'd long ago stopped noticing. At 2:17 a.m., the front door chimed, and Marcus looked up to see a middle-aged man walking toward the counter, perhaps mid-50s, wearing a dark suit that looked expensive but slightly dated in a way Marcus couldn't quite place, hair neatly combed and graying at the temples, carrying no luggage, and as he approached, Marcus caught a faint scent of something floral, like funeral lilies, sweet and cloying and wrong for a desert highway motel in the middle of the night. The transaction was routine. The man handed over a driver's license and Visa card bearing the name Robert Alderman, his handwriting on the registration form unusually precise, almost mechanical, each letter perfectly formed, and Marcus processed the payment without issue, slid the key card for room 309 across the counter, gave the standard directions about the elevator and ice machine, and watched the guest walk away with that pleasant smile that somehow never quite reached his eyes. Just another late-night traveler passing through, Marcus told himself, though something cold brushed against the back of his neck as the elevator doors closed, something that felt almost like a warning he was too tired to hear. The next morning, The day shift manager, Gloria, a perpetually tired woman who'd worked at the Desert Winds longer than anyone and had seen enough oddities to fill a book she'd never write, approached Marcus with a confused expression, asking why the system showed room 309 as occupied when that room had been sealed for renovation since October, the door padlocked, the furniture removed, completely inaccessible to guests and staff alike. Marcus felt the first cold tendril of unease wrap around his stomach as he insisted he'd checked someone in, showed her the transaction in the system, room 309, 2:17 a.m., Robert Alderman, visa ending in 4451, everything looking normal, everything looking real. And together they took the elevator to the third floor, walked down the long corridor toward 309, where Marcus could see from 20 feet away that Gloria was right. A heavy padlock hung from the door handle. Yellow caution tape formed an unbroken X across the frame, and a printed sign read, "Room closed for renovation. Do not enter." The dust on the floor undisturbed, no footprints, no sign that anyone had walked this way in months. "This doesn't make sense," Marcus muttered, his voice sounding strange in the empty hallway, and Gloria just looked at him with an expression he couldn't read before pulling out her phone to call security. 20 minutes later, they were crowded into the small back office, Marcus, Gloria, and a security guard named Pete who kept cracking his knuckles nervously, watching the footage from the lobby camera, the timestamp reading 2:17 a.m., and Marcus watched everything unfold exactly as he remembered. The front door opening, the man in the dark suit walking in, the conversation at the counter, the key card exchange, the walk toward the elevator. Gloria switched to the third-floor hallway camera, her hand trembling slightly on the mouse, and they watched the elevator doors open, watched the man step out and walk down the corridor toward room 309 with slow, deliberate steps, watched him stop at the padlocked door and turn to face the camera directly, and Marcus felt his heart stutter in his chest because the man was smiling, not the pleasant customer service smile from the lobby, but something else entirely, something knowing, something hungry. And then Robert Alderman walked through the door, not opened it, not unlocked it, but passed through the solid wood as if his body were made of smoke and shadow. And the footage continued for 6 more hours, the hallway empty and still, the door never opening again. And when Marcus finally found his voice, it came out as a whisper. "That's not possible." But the screen showed what it showed, and Gloria had gone pale as chalk beside him, and Pete had stopped cracking his knuckles because his hands were shaking too badly to move. Gloria transferred to a different property 2 weeks later. She never spoke to Marcus again, never answered his calls, and sometimes he wondered if she'd seen something else on that footage, something she hadn't shared, something that made her run. Marcus quit 3 days later, unable to spend another night in that building where the shadows seemed deeper now and the empty hallways felt like they were watching him. But before he left, he decided to check the registration records one last time, desperate for some rational explanation that would let him sleep without the lights on. The Visa card, when he asked a friend in the billing department to trace it, had been canceled in 2009, 14 years ago, yet the transaction had gone through without a single error. The driver's license number belonged to no one in the Nevada database, as if Robert Alderman had never existed at all. and the name returned only one result in Marcus's desperate late-night searching: an obituary from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, dated November 3, 2008, describing a 54-year-old businessman who died of a heart attack while traveling through Nevada, found in his hotel room by housekeeping staff the morning after he checked in, alone, no family notified for 3 days because no one had been expecting him anywhere. A man who'd slipped through the cracks of life just as easily as he'd slipped through that door. The hotel was the Desert Winds Motor Lodge, and the room was 309, the same room that had been sealed since October, the same room that should have been impossible to enter, the same room where a man had died alone 15 years ago and apparently never left. But that wasn't the detail that made Marcus sell his house and move to Vermont 3 weeks later, wasn't what kept him awake for months afterward, with every light burning and the television playing just to fill the silence. It was what housekeeping found when they finally cut the padlock and entered the sealed room at Gloria's request. A leather wallet lying on the dusty floor in the center of the empty space, fine desert sand scattered around it as if someone had just walked through, and inside the wallet a Nevada driver's license bearing Marcus Webb's photograph, his address, his date of birth, every detail perfect and accurate and impossible, except for one thing that made his blood turn to ice water in his veins. The issue date was March 14th, 10 years in the future. And sometimes now, late at night when the wind howls across the Vermont mountains, Marcus wonders if Robert Alderman was trying to warn him about something, or if he was delivering an invitation that Marcus has already accepted without knowing it.